I always love a good story on Conservative Home where it's, guys, why are we even talking about merging with Reform? It's just pure madness. And yet, here's the thing. When you ever get it from someone who is like, yeah, we should, it's all like the pros, how good it would be, how it would be like this surefire, awesome thing. And yet, as we've said before, they forget about the fact that where would all those moderates go that are still in the party? They would ultimately go to the Lib Dems. Let's face it, that's where they would go. That's where many of them have gone now. That's why in the upcoming local elections, I think the biggest winners of the local elections are going to be probably the Lib Dems. Maybe not overall, but I think they're going to do very, very well for themselves in the upcoming May local elections. Then, of course, you've got the missing in action, that missing 10%. What happens to them? They're not returning to the party now. They will probably either remain MIA or they may even join the Lib Dems. Who knows? But when we talked about yesterday, the fact that there's this rumor now, I think very much gathering pace rumor that there's this new party emerging or that's going to blossom forth on the right, thus splitting the right-wing vote three ways. Very, very much, as we said, coded in Dominic Cummings' language, where he has said that, look, this right-wing vote that we currently have and that we're fighting over is going to shrink even more to like 20%. And we'll be left fighting over this for who knows what. So you've got to at least attract some, more centrists. Who knows how well that'll work out, but that will be a very long-term project indeed to gain any dividends from that. That's for sure. But nevertheless, interesting times, as they say. But now we've got someone interesting coming in, Gavin Barwell. Gavin Barwell, another one of the exiled Tories from 2019. Very, very much someone who, like David Gauke, exiled, given the boot, shall we say, by Boris when he pretty much purged the party of, well, anyone competent, shall we say. But mostly, of course, those people were Remainers against sort of the deal that he was proposing, wanted a lot softer Brexit, and as they were told, you either get in line or, well, you're given the boot. And this was one of them that was given the boot. So it's very interesting to see, once again, one of these sort of, I don't know what to cast them as, sane conservative, a sane conservative. Like I say, disagree, of course, with probably everything politics-wise, but it's always interesting to see what their view is of people who go, we should join with Reform, because it tends to be very, very much often, as we'll see in a moment, why on earth do you want to join with them? Do you want to just kill the party now? We might as well. But before we do go getting into his prognosis on that, like I say, please click the like, share button, and of course, down below there's the Patreon page, there's a Buy Me Coffee link, there's the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So let's crack on then into this over on Conservative Home. So Gavin Barwell, if you don't know, he's a Conservative peer and, of course, was Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister from 2017 to 2019. Gee, I wonder what could have possibly happened to stop that. But anyway, he begins. I am honoured to, of course, been asked by your esteemed editor to cover for my friend and ideological soulmate, David Gauke. And of course, as you know, David Gauke, one of the very few Conservatives out there who is saying, hold on a minute, guys, why are we going in this direction? What's going on? He is a voice in himself into the wilderness. He is treated, as you will see in a moment, even his own friend, Gavin Barwell, is basically treated as some sort of pariah. Yet I think, give it a couple of years, people will look back on this from like the Conservative movement and go, actually, Gauke and Barwell and others were right. Rory Stewart as well, treated very much in the same ilk. But anyway, back to this. So, various senators sort of gave David Gauke, who is otherwise currently engaged in his review of the sentencing policy this week, Although I can only hope to receive the same adoration he regularly gets in the comments section. The comment section, so as we'll see in a moment, has nothing but, shall we say, adoration for Mr. Barwell. Yeah. So anyway, I'm spoilt for choice, of course, what to write about. How conservatives should respond to Trump's attempt to drag the global trading system back to the 19th century. Whether those conservatives who assured us that Trump would, of course, be trusted on Ukraine, was, of course, a free trader and believed in the rule of law, are feeling just a bit too, wee bit pregnant. Yeah, like I say, it is so fun. And I think that should be absolutely dogpiling into a lot of those people who said, "Oh, Trump will be fantastic." Of course, you can trust him on Ukraine. Of course, he's a free trader. Daniel Hanan, one of those sort of conservatives, currently absolutely crashing out. And we have to look at Daniel Hanan at some point because he has been suspiciously quiet in writing articles. He's only put out like a single tweet saying that, Trump is going to get absolutely thrown out on his behind on that. But we'll see if he surfaces anytime soon. But I am looking to see if he does and what he writes. Needless to say, I think it'll be very interesting. Anyway, so of course, the desperate, need for a political party in this country that is totally focused on growth and not a bigger state, more regulation on our labour markets, or even maintaining unnecessary trade barriers without our nearest neighbours, and even reducing the economical to benefit of migration. But of course, I decided to write about the future of politics on the right on this country. In a few weeks' time, Kimmy Badenoch will face her first electoral test in the form of this year's local elections and, of course, the parliamentary by-election in Runcorn Halesbury constituency, which apparently Liz Truss is running for. I don't know if that's true, but apparently Liz Truss has thrown her hat into the mix. Gee, I wonder how many votes she'll get, or will she actually able to get her deposit back? Anyway, she couldn't have much a harder baptism. She has inherited a situation, if anything, even more difficult than which confronted William Hague back in 1997. Two of her three immediate predecessors did immense damage to the party's reputation. Johnson by repeatedly lying about Partygate and, of course, by promising to take back control of our borders, then putting in place a new immigration system that trebled net migration. Liz Truss trashing our reputation for economic competence. Unlike, of course, in 97, we now face a challenge from our right in the form of reform, as well as challenges from Labour and the Liberal Democrats to our left. Whereas William Hague's first election test in the 1999 local council elections offered at least a chance to regain some of that ground in local government, Kemi is almost certainly to preside over further losses of council seats. Most of the seats up for election on May the 1st were contested, of course, back in 2021, when the Conservative Party was riding high in the polls in the wake of the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. And this is why I keep on telling you that, this is going to be dire for the Conservatives, massively dire, because that last time they did them in, he is right pointing out, the last time that was like the peak of Johnson mania, because not too long after, Partygate hits and it was all just downhill from there. So that is like the peak of the peak of their electoral success, of the Johnson electoral magic. Downhill from there. It is going to be oof. If you thought 2024 was bad, this could be, I think, maybe the worst local election results for the Conservatives ever. I really think it will be. Anyway, back onto this. And of course, on top of that, the very first by-election for a new parliament in Runcorn and Helsby is one, of course, the last seats where she would have wanted a by-election. Reform were in second place back in July and are therefore only able to likely to portray themselves now as the challengers to Labour. And ultimately, I think you will see when that happens, you will see Reform and the Conservatives cannibalize each other. I think that's what I'm predicting. I can't tell you who will win, but I can guarantee you now, Reform and the Conservatives are going to cannibalize each other. So, if seems likely, Reform wins hundreds of council seats in the by-election, while the Conservatives lose hundreds of seats. It will inevitably lead to more talk about whether the two parties should merge or at least do a deal, where each will stand down in certain constituencies to avoid splitting the anti-Labour vote. I should declare an interest at this point. I would not want to be a member of or vote for a party in which Nigel Farage had a prominent role. At least he sets out his stall very, very good, very cleanly like that. And it is still worth pointing out that there are a lot of Conservatives who are like very, very, very much anti-Nigel Farage. Very, very much so. But unfortunately, they are few and far between, or else all of what we saw from 2014 and onwards probably would have never have happened. But but for the whims of fate that we see today. So, but too many, of course, people in politics do proceed on the basis that if only their party adopted their set of values as its policies, it would lead to everlasting electoral success. Again, gets that right. Can't disagree with them on that. Clearly, in many cases, they are, of course, wrong. I will therefore try as objectively as I can to look at the case for and against a merger and or deal. The case for is very simple. For as long as the right is divided, it is going to be very difficult to defeat this government, just as Margaret Thatcher was able to win fairly easily in the 1980s against a divided left. Again, everyone recognizes that. Everyone recognizes that a divided right vote is bad if you are someone on the right wing, but if you're like me, who is like on the left, that is a very, very good thing to see. Very, very good thing to see. Labour will, of course, almost certainly lose seats at the next election. But if the Conservatives and Reform continue now to roughly split the right vote, Keir Starmer is likely to enter either a win or a majority, or to do either the achievable of one with the Liberal Democrats. In a case, of course, against a merger is far more nuanced. Proponents, of course, of a merger do assume that a merged party would secure the support of everyone who currently says they intend to vote Conservative or Reform, but that is highly unlikely. And I keep on bringing up this as well. I always bring this up. Those Conservatives that are left, if the merger would happen, there is no guarantee they would stay or vote for that party. Same for those who are like full-on Reform. There is no way they would vote Conservative. They might even consider this merger a betrayal. It's so murky, and there's so much evidence out there to say that like this merger, this supposed pact that would happen, would end in absolute disaster almost instantaneously. So polls do suggest that there are plenty of current Conservative supporters like me who would want to support a Farageist party. Who wouldn't want to support a Farageist party. Likewise, of course, there are plenty of Reform voters who wouldn't vote for Conservative even if the party were led by Farage. And I am assuming here that the Conservative proponent of a merger envisages Reform falling into the Conservative Party rather than the other way around. And that's true. Like, if the merger happens and somehow Farage gets control of the Conservative Party, it's not suddenly going to become, Conservative Party reborn. It will just be Reform now under the branding of the Conservative Party. That's all it will be. That's all it will be. And Farage will almost immediately launch over some sort of takeover bid. He will launch a challenge. He knows he will win it, and he will win it hands down. There is no, shall we say, peace in the Conservative Party if you let Farage in. If, of course, you look at the constituencies where Reform is currently projected to win, they are mainly in some of the least conservative parts of the country. North East, South Yorkshire, and, of course, the Welsh Valleys. Polling also shows that on the many issues of the 2024 Conservative voters are, of course, more like Labour and Liberal Democrat voters than, of course, Reform voters. Take the attitudes to Trump. YouGov polling in mid-February found that only 7% of the Liberal Democrat voters, 8% of Labour voters, and 28% of Conservative voters have a favourable view of him, compared to the 66% of Reform voters. So no one likes Trump. And if, as you've seen at the moment, Farage shall we say, be very pro-Trump to now cagey about Trump, even he knows he has to be careful about how much, shall we say, friendship and stuff he espouses about Donald Trump. On net zero, YouGov polling in March found that 80% of the Liberal Democrat voters, 79% of Labour voters, and 52% of Conservative voters either very strongly or somewhat support achieving net zero by 2050. Only 26% of Reform voters agree. Again, net zero, the environment, the polling backs it up to do it. But even if, of course, you are not convinced by these arguments, there is, of course, another point to consider. It, of course, takes two to merge. And all the signs are that Farage is not interested. He's returned to frontline politics in the last election with the express intention of doing the maximum possible damage to the Conservative Party. And, of course, remains intent in killing it off. If Reform does gain hundreds of council seats and win Runcorn, it will likely confirm that he has the momentum in British politics. Next year, we will have the Scottish Parliament and Welsh Senate. Reform are currently polling ahead of the Conservatives in both of these elections. In Wales, they will now at least in with a chance of topping that poll. Why would Farage agree to a merger now? Very true. However, I would say this now. I still think until there is some proper electoral evidence put forward that Reform are a paper tiger, even if Reform win council seats, even if they win council seats in this election, all those council seats that they currently have now haven't been won through a vote. They have been got through defections. So always remember that their current, shall we say, sitting in local politics is not exactly 100% secure. A lot of them have not been put to electoral test. In fact, the great majority of them have not been put to electoral test. In fact, they actually won a by-election last week. So that now takes them up to, I think, 13 seats they have won since the general election. And there have been over 200 plus by-elections at this point. Hardly, shall we say, a vote in confidence for them. Like I say, until we actually see stuff that says Reform are a major threat, I'm not convinced. Until we actually see, those votes, those polls actually turn into votes, which, bear in mind, again, if Reform is so popular, why haven't they won more by-elections, right? Until we see that, I ain't convinced. However, of course, Farage will come out and say, "Oh, well, look, what a wonderful win." But like I say, we'll see. We'll see what happens when the dust clears and what the numbers, shall we say. So it, of course, might be that the Conservatives and Reform are still at least polling roughly the same a year on out from the general election. That might be somewhat at least more amenable to a merger or some kind of deal. But right now, we have the bizarre spectacle of Reform trying to kill the Conservatives off, while some Conservatives eye them admiringly. If we want this great party to survive, we need to renew it and make the case for a centre-right politics against both of what is currently the failing government and Farage's brand of Trump's populism. And of course, every single comment is having a go at him. So there's somebody who says that he's centre right and wondering about when he's taken this Damascus conversion. I'm like, he's always been that way, but never mind. Someone else says here, just go join the Lib Dems. Yeah, Reform are only here because you abandoned conservatism in the first place and went after the Lib Dem vote. That's not what happened at all. You're on yourself to blame. I've said this is kind of fun. Absolutely, if the likes of Gork and Barwell were in their spiritual home, the Lib Dems, we would have had a conservative Tory party. No need for reform. um, yeah, like I say, the current Conservative Party is just purely unsalvageable at this point. Um, and unless you really took like a weed whacker to it, and I mean seriously, get the scythe out and start doing some serious reforms and start changing serious policy, no way is it surviving. Purely just on the age thing alone. I mean, more Conservative voters die each year than from any other main party, probably except Reform, because again, they're fighting for that same ever decreasing small vote share. Um, let them fight. Let them fight, as they say in Godzilla, because that only enables us to do so much more. And like I say, you are seeing this steady trend of people joining the Lib Dems. And I've always said this. I think eventually you will get to a point, maybe the next election, maybe not then, but maybe even the one after that, you might see the Lib Dems become the main part of opposition. And that will be a very big sea change in our politics. A very big sea change in our politics, should that happen. But the Conservatives slipping into third, hey, who knows at this point? We'll see what happens, but the next election is a long way off. And of course, we've got these May elections, and of course, next year we've got the Senate and Scottish elections. I don't think, to be honest, Badnoch will maybe survive until those particular elections next year. If she does, I'll be very surprised. But given the fact that you've got talk already about pushing her to replace her in the upcoming October, Conservative, conference, you've got talks of a new party emerging at the moment on the right. Oh boy, oh boy. Let them fight. Let them fight. Indeed. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think down below. And as always, we'll see you all next time.